Caught me looking away. It's Thursday morning. Welcome in. And where in the world are you at? We're going to be talking about your brain and how insulin resistance is related to it and a number of the disorders that we see with it. So maybe you can have some hope where you thought because you have a gene you didn't have hope. We'll get into all of that. But let me know where you're coming in from. If you have anyone in your family who has Parkinson's, who has Alzheimer's, maybe even it's ADHD or autism, um, brain fog, migraine headaches, all of this stuff going on in the brain. And there's one big link. I'm not going to say that it causes all of it, but it's definitely at play in all of these brain disorders, and it's insulin resistance. So we're going to talk about insulin resistance. We're going to talk about your brain in a very like overview manner. Okay, I don't have scientific papers. I mean, I do have, but I don't have time or them pulled up to show you. But we're going to talk about that today. This is kind of an exciting topic to me because so many of us are struggling with all of these issues. And if you knew that you didn't have to be on crazy medications to start to feel better, would that make you feel better? And understanding that by taking care of your brain, your body starts to feel better. Um, so let's dive in this morning and start talking about it. I will explain insulin resistance in a little bit for those of you who don't yet know, because it is new science and not everybody knows. Heck, a couple of years ago, I had no idea. I just knew I was sick and wasn't getting better. And who knew that by addressing my insulin resistance or my diabetes, that all of this stuff would get better. So here we are talking about it today. Not a doctor, not a nutritionist, just a woman who got sick, started to figure things out when no one else could, or were able to. And now I share that with you guys. So let's dive in. I was asked yesterday to talk about this. We're going to be talking about vertigo tomorrow because it's a very different issue. But let's think about, well, now I'm going to explain insulin resistance now, because in order to understand what's happening in the brain, you need to understand what's happening with insulin resistance. So it seems to be this big key buzzword, right? And it is because science is just starting to look at it and understand in depth what's going on. And in some areas, they've looked at it to find the link, but they don't really have the in-depth explanation. So all we can say is that there's definitely a link there and it's involved somehow. But insulin resistance really is very, very simple. It's a glucose dysregulation problem. Now, insulin resistance will show up long before you have high blood sugars or a high A1C or are ever diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes. And so we're going to go over why. First of all, what's causing it is this influx of refined carbohydrates that we eat. So I'm going to try to remind myself to say refined carbohydrates. So that's the breads, pastas, starches, rice, right? We're eating more of that than ever. And that food is converting into this energy called glucose in our system far too quickly. So if I want people to think about this, there's three macronutrients in our food: protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So if it's not a protein and it's not a fat, it is a carbohydrate. The big difference is that we need to focus on these whole food carbohydrates, and for a number of reasons we'll go over in just a minute. One of them being fibers that are attached to the whole foods that allow that glucose delivery and metabolism to happen much slower. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about fiber. That's key in our diet. Ooh, there's a lot to unpack today. Remind me to talk to you about protein, and the difference between animal protein and plant-based protein, because that's important for us. But too much food that converts into energy too quickly raises our blood sugar levels, our glucose levels in our blood. Now, when that happens, our body sends out a response because our body's really good at being like, this is happening, so A is happening, B needs to happen, so we close that loop and everything is fine. When blood sugar rises more than 1 teaspoon in your bloodstream, your your hypothalamus is going to cue your brain is going to start to cue your body to through the pituitary to create a hormone called insulin. There's too many words just struggling to get out. This hormone called insulin that's created in the pancreas. That hormone has a lot of jobs. The job we're going to focus on is energy delivery. So when you have energy go into the bloodstream, A happens. The body says, hey, we need a transport system to get that energy into the cells. B happens. But now then we have to have C happen, where the cells actually accept the energy in. And in a normal day, in a normal body, in a normal situation, the blood sugar levels go up, the insulin level rises, the insulin takes the energy and delivers it to the cells. Everybody's happy, everything is going fine, we're all good. But in this constant glucose fed state, our glucose levels are going up, our insulin level is going up, the insulin is delivering the energy, but then we're putting more energy in, and the body hasn't even used the energy we have. So insulin goes up again, it delivers more energy, we eat again, insulin's up, and eventually we train our insulin levels to be high, and it stays high pretty much all the time. What happens with that is this. Insulin is there's big words, but I just don't know how else to say this. So insulin is anabolic. And anabolic, when you guys hear that word, what I want you to think of is growth. Anabolic means growth. So insulin is an anabolic hormone, which means it wants things to grow. Insulin is very protective, and we need this mechanism in our body, or we would waste away like that. So our body protects this growth cycle. When insulin is out, it can be kind of like a bully because it's taking precedence over everything else, because the body wants to maintain itself. So it wants to take in this energy, it wants to grow. So the hormone called glucagon, that is catabolic, that eats things up, can't do its job as long as insulin is out. So now when we've trained our body to have high levels of insulin, they don't come down as quickly, which means we don't get into a fat burning state. We don't get into a junk burning state as easily. When we can switch between fat burning and sugar burning, we're what's called metabolically flexible. Unfortunately, about 93% of us today are metabolically inflexible, meaning we're running on sugar all the time. We're never or rarely ever accessing the fat stores. Well, what happens in your body is you start to prioritize insulin all the time. So I want you to think about this. If you go home every day from work and you take the same road every day, have you ever had a time where you're driving along and you're all of a sudden at home and you don't remember getting there? You've trained yourself to take that route, right? And have you ever tried to take a different route home? Because, hey, maybe it'll be a good idea to try a different way, and you're uncomfortable the whole way because you're not used to that route. And you maybe get lost a little. Maybe what seemed like was going to be a quicker route home takes longer. Things are just different, and it's not that ease that you usually have. Well, you've trained yourself to take that route. And what's happening is we're training our bodies to take the route of burning glucose, or utilizing, I shouldn't say burning, utilizing glucose for fuel. And that requires a high level of insulin. Good morning, Florida Cop. So now we have these high levels of insulin. So what? So we're getting energy delivered. Who cares what's what's the big problem? Well, anytime we have anything that's out of balance in our system, we start to have something else break down. So it's so good to see you in here. Um, so with insulin resistance, and you're going to hear me say more and more of this because I'm of the same camp. When we talk about insulin resistance, it gets confusing because it would imply that, and this is what I thought for a long time too, so no harm, no foul, right? We're all learning. But it just sounds like everything is just resistant to insulin, everything is shutting down. But what happens in this phenomenon called insulin resistance, and I'm going further than I'm intended to, is that some cells are resistant to the insulin. Some cells are responding normally, and some cells are taking up way too much now. So we have these kind of three pockets of things happening. So it's really better termed hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin in the bloodstream. But we're just going to stick with insulin resistance. But insulin resistance doesn't mean that every cell is resistant to insulin. It means a number of cells are resistant to insulin, and the body's uptake of energy is now changing. It's not the same as it's meant to be. So this thing happens in every single cell of the body. Every cell needs energy to move on and do their job. So we need that energy for our cells to do their job. If some of the cells or some of the processes are being impeded by insulin, now those cells are getting the energy or tools they need to do their job. It really does have to do with the food processing from all these companies. So Jay Webb says just what I just said. It really has to do with processing from all these food companies. So that's true. But one of the big things is that I want to focus on. There's so many things we could focus on with the food, right? That's a whole other probably couple day discussion. But one of the major things that's happening with our food is they're stripping out things like fiber. I mean, enzymes and proteins and vitamins and minerals all get stripped out as well as they process. But fiber is the one thing that seems to have changed what's going on. So now our body can't deal with the carbohydrates like they should. And why? That's like a lot of you guys haven't heard that. Fiber is a part of your carbohydrates normally. It's packaged with carbohydrates in nature, and it's there to help slow down the delivery of glucose into your system. When we manufacture stuff, because we don't want it to be as fully as the food industry doesn't want it to be as filling and as fulfilling as it should be. We just want it to taste good and we want it to burn through quick so you buy more. They strip out fiber. So now you're staying fuller, less, but your blood sugars are starting to get out of control. So which means you have more insulin, and eventually that excess insulin starts to not be able to do its job. And now that sugar that it's trying to deliver to cells that won't take it up, to cells that are taking it up just fine, to cells that are like, woohoo, I'll take all the extra. All of a sudden that all starts to go bad. And how? When insulin can't get the energy into the rest of the cells, it starts putting it in your storage unit. That storage unit is your fat cells. When your fat cells start to get too full, they actually become insulin resistant as well. Now insulin can't even deliver energy to the fat cells. Now the blood sugar starts to go up, and now you have a high A1C or a high fasting blood glucose. By the time you get there, understand that you've trained your body to run on insulin and you're metabolically inflexible and you're going to be having and experiencing a number of problems. And it's not a doomsday thing, guys. It's so super simple to fix. And there's hope that you don't have to live like that. It doesn't take a ton of medications or 1,000 trips to the doctor or all these scans and stuff to understand what the root cause for most of this is. So insulin resistance, eating too much that's turning into sugars too quickly, and we're doing it too often. So if you understand that every time you eat, and especially carbohydrates, your blood sugars are going to rise, which means your insulin levels are going to rise. Now stop and think about everybody who's told you to eat every 2 hours. Can you see that if you're eating every 2 hours, especially the typical foods we eat, you're spiking your sugars, you're spiking your insulin, you're spiking your sugars, you're spiking your insulin, you're spiking your sugars, and you're doing it all day long. Insulin can take up to 8 hours to come back down so that the fat burning or the fat utilization can happen. But that doesn't happen for about 4 hours after we've had our insulin come down. So that's about a 12-hour period. If we're eating every 2 hours, then you're just continually spiking your blood glucose. So Pamela, I'm going to get to your questions because I haven't answered you yet. So Pamela over on Facebook is saying she's stuck at her weight at the moment. She planted herself upside down. So recovering from rib pain, resting body seems to be upset. Now I'm tackling insulin resistant. Muscle loss is high. We'll talk about muscle loss a little bit later. Vertigo, we're going to talk about vertigo tomorrow from insulin resistance. because it has so many other mechanisms within the inner ear that insulin is impeding, that's causing vertigo and Meniere's disease. So we're going to be going over that more in depth tomorrow. Yeah, and most people have been trained. Like every morning, there's this lovely influencer. She's lost a lot of weight. She's on fire. She really believes she's helping people. So I have problems because I'm like, dude, do you know what you're doing? And at the same time, I'm like, she's trying to help people and, not my space. So, but she's telling people to eat every 2 hours in order to lose weight. That may help in the short term, but in the long term, what's going to happen is the cycle that I talked about, where you may lose some weight at first, but now you're training your body to run on sugar, and your body really starts to demand sugar when that's what it's trying to do. So, how does all of this relate to the brain? Well, if the body starts to become insulin resistant and every cell in the body needs insulin, the brain becomes insulin resistant at the same time as the body does. They didn't used to think insulin resistance affected the brain really at all. And then they started doing studies, and I cannot recount all the studies, but there's study after study after study. Um, Even like in post-mortem studies where they study the brains of people who maybe had Alzheimer's or some of these other things that I'm going to talk about. And the one thing they found is that they found tissue that said that this person was insulin resistant. In more and more and more of these studies, they're finding this high correlation between insulin resistance and someone who died of a disease like Alzheimer's, even Parkinson's. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to grab my notes real quick because there's some things I wanted to make sure I said, because inevitably there's always something I forget to say. So we're going to start with, first of all, we just want to start with this little fact. Our brain runs on glucose. Our brain's energy source is glucose. We need glucose in our brain. I'm going to keep saying it till everybody understands it, because sometimes it takes 10 or 20 times before it sinks in, right? Your brain needs glucose to function properly. So if it's not getting that glucose to your brain, guess what? Your brain doesn't have energy. Guess what? Now you have brain fog. Guess what? Now you have depression, you're fatigued. You may even run into some anxiety because your brain is not getting energy. In fact, they're saying, scientists, being them, are saying that not Alzheimer's, migraine headaches. Where's the statistic I have written down? Migraine headaches are just a function of people not getting enough fuel in the brain. A migraine headache really is the brain screaming for energy. It's not about take a pain pill. It's about I need energy in my brain. There's so much information. I don't know if I can unpack it all this morning, but I'm going to try and get as much out as I can. There are also studies. This is going to be interesting because when I talk about intermittent fasting, people are like, why? And it's so damaging, and all you're doing is restricting calories and blah, 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 blah. Intermittent fasting is not about weight loss. Let me say it again. Intermittent fasting is not about weight loss. And Pamela, I'm sorry that you've fallen twice in a week. We need to get your insulin resistance under control. That can help your balance. It did for me. So you have, Dawn has 7 out of all of it listed above. So you guys, if you look at the list and you have more than 1 or 2 of them, just consider that you are insulin resistant and you need to address it. We're going to go over how to address it in about 10 minutes. So the brain is now insulin resistant as well. Well, I've always thought about, okay, well, the brain just has insulin receptors like the rest of the body, and the insulin receptors just aren't taking up the energy as much as they should. And that's the problem, right? Pretty clear and simple. But guess what? There's a second action that insulin is causing us to have less energy in the brain. Before I go on, I want to say that this little 2 to 3 pound thing in our body, right? 2 to 3 pounds of our entire weight is in our brain. That little amount of our body uses up 25 to 30% of the glucose that we ingest. You would think it would be the muscles, right? You would think that the muscles are all over the body, and it's arguably the most insulin sensitive space in the body, and that it's using up the most insulin. But by volume, the brain uses more glucose, which needs insulin to deliver it, than any place else in the body. So if those insulin receptors are becoming resistant in the brain, that's part one. Part two is this. And I probably will go over heart problems again next week, so we can go over all of the mechanisms that affect vascularity. So you're going to see the vascular issue in a couple of different diseases or disorders in the brain. But what happens is I've talked about the endothelium, and if you haven't been with me and you don't know, it's fine. There's videos in my if you look at the heart section in my tab in TikTok, there's videos about how insulin resistance affects your vascularity and drives your blood pressure up. So you can go take a look at those and you'll understand this piece better. But what you need to know right now is inside the inner lining of our blood vessels is this layer of cells called the endothelium. Now, when I talk about blood pressure, I talk about how that endothelium starts to thicken. But when the endothelium also produces nitric oxide, which then it is producing less of it, allowing the blood vessels to open less. So the endothelium, at the basic bottom line, this inner lining of your blood vessels, has a lot to do with insulin, right? Well, the endothelium is also what comprises what we call the blood-brain barrier. Those inner lining of your blood vessels determine what components can access the brain. What of what's in your bloodstream can actually get into your brain. And it's a very important barrier, right? Because we want to protect our brain. If our brain function goes down, we're down. We can lose an arm and still function. We can lose a toe and still function. But if we lose our brain, we're done, right? So it's protecting that. So the blood-brain barrier is in this inner wall of your blood vessels. Now, when they start to thicken up and don't act like they should, guess what's happening? They're letting less insulin into the brain. They're letting less glucose into the brain. So now you have a brain up here that's already having insulin receptor problems, which means it's not getting enough energy. And now the endothelium, or your vascular system, is saying, oh, we're just allowing less of this in the door in the first place. So now you have like this double system that's reducing the energy in your brain. Now we can start to understand what's going on in the brain a little bit, right? Two mechanisms where we're just not getting the right amount of energy to the brain. So migraine headaches, if we know that migraines are caused by just a lack of energy, good news, right? Fix this insulin resistance problem, get those cells to start to normalize. Your brain will start to take up energy more properly. And this gets into fasting, because fasting helps this receptors of insulin start to be more sensitive. Your brain can actually also use ketones for energy. But if it's running on sugar and it can't get the delivery of sugar, then you're going to be having brain fog and problems. But if you can start training your body to switch once in a while and utilize ketones, now your brain function is actually going up. Now it's getting fuel again in a different manner through different receptors than the insulin receptors, and you start to have more clear thought. You start to have better brain function. You start to see a reduction in Alzheimer's. How many of you would be shocked to know that Alzheimer's can be addressed with intermittent fasting? Anybody ever told you that? Anybody ever told you that someone that you have, like, great, there's great, not so great, whatever. The fact is, with some of these brain disorders, there is definitely a genetic link, right? So you have this genetic link, and you know that, okay, my family, there's been Alzheimer's in my family, there's been Parkinson's in my family, I'm just doomed. I'm going to get it, nothing I can do. That's how most of us feel, right? Yes, that counts for dementia as well, Karen. So getting the sugar levels down so that the body can become more responsive to it, also utilizing ketones, can help with dementia as well. So no, it's not about suffering. It's not about any of that. It's about allowing our beautiful, amazing body to do the work it's supposed to. And we're supposed to go into ketosis or autophagy once in a while. We were built for this. We were built to run like this. So fasting and fiber are huge for this whole thing. And we're going to get into how that all looks in a little bit. But now if we look at Alzheimer's and understand that even if you have the gene for it, what they say is, and I do have um, some more statistics, right? So predominantly people with Alzheimer's, you see it linked to type 2 diabetes. They understand now that it really is a glucose regulation, or more correctly, an insulin regulation problem. Aff- Affect how insulin sensitive your brain is, and you affect how much Alzheimer's, or if a person shows up with Alzheimer's in the first place. Now, just off topic, but a little quirky thing that I found out that I like to share. If you're having problems parking straight, so when you're parking, if you're constantly parking crooked, you get out of your car and you're like, dang, I parked like an ass. I better get back in and straighten my car out. That's an early warning sign of Alzheimer's and possibly dementia. So if you see that happening in your life, understand that, yeah, that you need to start addressing how sugar is utilized in your brain, and that can start to normalize. My parking, I'm happy to say, is much better. 3 years ago, I was parked sideways in the parking lot every time. Now I am able to park straight the first time more often than not, and it's amazing. Quirky little detail, right? All right, so Alzheimer's. I think by now most people understand that Alzheimer's is actually being called type 3 diabetes. There are so many properties in there going on with plaques and tangles in the brain, and insulin resistance actually exacerbates all of that, causing it to be one of the highest linked, we're going to call it like a light switch or a trigger that turns on this Alzheimer's gene or genetic propensity, right? So control the blood sugars, control the insulin, and you can control the onset of Alzheimer's. Or uh, like I was starting to head there. My son joked about it, but he was terrified because look at my son is 31. He has a lot to do. He doesn't want to have to take care of mama, and mama doesn't want to have him take care of me either. But the bottom line is getting control of my insulin levels helped with my onset of what we both knew was starting to be Alzheimer's. Now, when we look at vascular dementia, it's not just a glucose regulation problem. When we look at vascular dementia, part of what's happening is that we are not getting enough blood flow to the brain, thus vascular dementia, right? Vascular meaning blood flow. There's just not enough in the brain. Crazy stuff, right? The fasting, and I'm going to show you how fiber is going to help with this too. Fasting and fiber for this whole thing. And I actually have 6 simple steps, but we're going to focus on the fasting and fiber right now. Now, with vascular dementia, if your blood flow is reduced, as it is when I talk about the 5 ways that insulin resistance is causing your blood pressure to go up, that at the same time is reducing your vascularity. This also leads into this quirky thing to erectile dysfunction, vascular issue, right? There's a ton of vascular issues that we're going to see that are linked to insulin resistance because insulin is reducing how your blood can flow and how much of it is flowing. Your blood pressure is up, your vascularity is down, you're getting migraine headaches, you have brain fog, you have anxiety. A couple of things are going wrong, and it's all linked to insulin resistance. Now, Parkinson's, when we look at that, there is there's an area of the brain, the substantia nigra, and it controls our movement, and that's the area of the brain that's affected in Parkinson's. Now, as the cells in that area of the brain start to die off, they're producing less dopamine. And when that happens, we start to see some of the dementia that can come along with Parkinson's. So now not only is it the tremors, but there's a loss for words, and there's all of these other effects that can come along with it. And that has a lot to do also with the dopamine reduction in the brain. But the crazy thing is, now insulin may or may not cause some of that, but what happens with insulin is that it is causing a problem with dopamine uptake in the brain. So now you have less dopamine and you're less likely to take up what's happening. And this is how people with Parkinson's, I believe, are oftentimes having worse and worse symptoms because there's this dual onslaught. Now, they've noticed that 30% 30% of people with Parkinson's have type 2 diabetes. That's pretty big. But wait a second, because when we look at people who are studied with Parkinson's, 80% of Parkinson's people have insulin resistance. It's a pretty big link. So now, did the insulin resistance cause the Parkinson's? Likely not. Is the insulin resistance making the Parkinson's progress further and worse? Possibly so. So would it be worth, for those people that we love that have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, to start addressing their insulin resistance so that their longevity and the quality of life can be better? You guys, when I started the protocol that I am on, my brain function was dropping. It was devastating for me. So don't think that because somebody has this, and I say suffering, that I don't understand. I don't have Parkinson's. I didn't have vascular dementia, but I have had a number of these things. And yes, for me, it was very much suffering because my quality of life was not what I expected it to be or what I thought was possible for me. And that's hard, a hard pill to swallow. So when we talk about some of these things, with the insulin, that was the other thing. So with those, when we're talking about dopamine and how it's taken up, and even the receptors or the action of the receptors, what they did notice was that there's a 30% increase in dopamine uptake when insulin levels are brought down. So lower insulin levels means greater dopamine uptake in the brain. That's pretty crazy. If you're suffering with, and this can lead into things like sleep apnea and just this whole brain dysfunction of serotonin and dopamine not being able to be utilized in the brain or produced because of insulin resistance, is huge, right? So we want to protect those neurotransmitters and make sure that we're getting in the right amounts. And most of us are not getting enough of them, and that's a problem. So oh, so when we talk about that, 40% of people on antipsychotics, 40% of people on antipsychotics affecting the brain through medications. Now, I want to pause here and say that I'm not saying that in all cases antipsychotics are bad. No, some people need that support. Great. What I want you to know is 40% of them develop type 2 diabetes. Antipsychotics dampen the dopamine receptor, and when the dopamine receptors are down, insulin goes up as well. So as with anything else I talk about, insulin has this interplay with everything. So insulin can cause something worse, but the worsening of that something, whatever it is I'm talking about for the day, can make insulin resistance worse as well. So again, my view is, let's take the insulin resistance piece out and let the body start to heal up from the some things that are going on, right? If we can control this piece and make it better, then all of these some things can get better too. So that's that one. Then I can't even read. You guys look at. I can't even read my own handwriting. Uh, I hate to admit it, but that's true. Okay, so that's most of the mental stuff, right? I just want you to really understand, when we're talking about brain function, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves that doesn't require medications and crazy stuff is to address the insulin and the energy usage in our brain. And that's going to start to allow our brain to run like a fine-tuned machine that it actually is. So getting the insulin under control is key. How are we going to do that? How are we going to get the insulin under control? And how is this so simple? So two things. fiber and fasting. Okay. Fiber before you eat, every time you eat. And why? Fiber is slowing down the delivery of glucose into your system. So it doesn't mean go on low sugar diets, because I was listening to my favorite metabolic scientist, and I was listening to a couple of brain um, specialists, and they were talking different podcasts, not on the same podcast, but they were talking about how this extreme reduction of carbohydrates, especially whole food carbohydrates, then changes how the body is reacting to glucose, and you end up downplaying this whole metabolism in the first place. A healthy metabolism is able to deal with a natural amount of carbohydrates, being your fruits and vegetables primarily, right? But it's also able to switch into fat burning and to be able to utilize fat for fuel as well. So extreme reduction of carbohydrates long term, what they're seeing is they're starting to notice problems with brain function on these extreme restrictive diets. So this then leads me into this morning, which I'm just kind of processing through. It leads me into feeling so much better about the stance that I've taken on that I want people to be able to be sustainable. And I don't want people to have to go left one way or right one way, or like I'm taking this narrow path and that's the only path. Like some people that may be necessary. For the majority of us, I want us all to know that it doesn't have to be an extremely restricted life. We just have to figure out what went wrong. And what went wrong is that our foods have been modified, fiber has been stripped out, and we're eating too much often. Two big things. Yeah, and that's true. You were told keto, 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 but the thing is, now they're starting to see why keto. Let's talk about that. Can we break that down just a little bit from my small understanding? And I want you to understand that I'm just a woman, just a regular person. I'm processing through a lot of these things too. I was told keto, keto, keto for a long time too. And probably one of the reasons my insulin resistance didn't like tip over into pre-diabetes and diabetes for so long is because I was very active, and I lived a keto lifestyle for about 10 years as I was competing in powerlifting and as a world level athlete. I was still insulin resistant. I was still losing joints. I was still having brain fog and a number, and especially fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. Those things were horrible. Even though my lifestyle on the outset was healthy, I was having a problem regulating glucose, even in the real organic foods that I ate, in the small amounts that I ate them, because I was doing keto, right? So what if we could understand that it's not just about the glucose we're taking in, it's about how our body is utilizing it. And if our bodies shut down to utilizing it because we've taken in so much, yeah, for a short term, it may be good for people to start bringing those sugar levels down so the body can find that midline level again. Because when you've gone way far one way, sometimes the pendulum has to swing the other way. In that instance, I would say keto is fine. But what I'm saying now is they're saying, as a long-term fix, it may not be the best fix. The best fix may be have a whole food, fully rounded diet. Eat the carbohydrates, but make sure you're prioritizing protein and that you're filling up with fats. When you're eating the carbohydrates, they should be things like raw fruits or whole fruits and vegetables. Limit those starches and carbohydrates coming from starches, grains, whatever, and focus on fruits and vegetables for your carbohydrates, and just live a normal life. Stop going, oh my gosh, because I remember, and my breakfast a lot of times would be like a hamburger patty with an egg on top and a little bit of spinach, because too much spinach was going to put me over my carbohydrates for the day. Maybe if I was lucky, I could have a little condiments on there, but that's how I ate, right? Keto, because I was committed to being a world champion. And I was losing joints, but nobody could tell me how to stop losing my joints until I figured out insulin resistance. Now, okay, so I'm not saying keto is bad. I'm talking about now is that long term, it may not be the best idea long term. Okay. You know what, if you can cut out refined sugars, yes. Um, but if you're talking about, what I want people to understand is that fruits are sugars and most vegetables have sugars in them too. So you're not going to cut them out, right? But focus on those forms of sugar rather than the powdered, refined, put it in some grains that are starchy and refined. And now we have this sugar bomb that we're eating and wondering why our glucose levels are going up and our insulin levels going up. Yeah, so cut out those if you can, but you don't have to cut them out all the way if you understand that it's how your body is utilizing the sugar. So what I do, and I've been drinking my cold tea this morning because I was waiting. So every morning, you guys, what I do is this. I have this little packet of tea, and it's easy. I just tear the top off, pour it in water. This water is now kind of hot, warm, not hot. But, and then, because I don't ever bring a spoon in. Why don't I ever bring a spoon in? So I'm just going to stir this up. Now that's my tea that I drink every morning. Why the tea? The tea is actually helping me when I'm in a fasted state. And I didn't go over my 6 simple steps. So let's do that first. The 6 simple steps to getting your insulin resistance under control. So I tried to just encompass everything. You could break it down to 2 or 3, but I like these 6. Fiber first before you eat, every time you eat. Again, understand that fiber is regulating the sugar that you're eating, so it's not hitting your system so quickly. So because the food industry stripped it out, even modified it out, in our organic foods, we need to put it back. Okay, so we're going to put it back by adding it back in because we're just not going to get enough out of the foods we have today with the environment that we're in. So fiber first, prioritize protein. About a gram of protein per pound of body weight is what you need to get in a day for your ideal body weight. For me, that looks like 150 to 170 grams of protein a day. Then I want to fill up with fats. And so the fats you should be, this was brilliant. One of the heart or the brain guys that I was listening to recently was talking about this. And I've said it before, but he said it so brilliantly. But when you think about fats, what I want you to think about is fruit fats like olives, coconut, and avocado. If you take the meat of those fruits and were to squeeze them or compress them, you're going to get an oily substance out of them. Those are healthy fats. These seed oils, like if you squeeze a seed, are you getting oil out of it? A very little amount. So stay away from those industrialized seed oils, corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, all of that stuff. They've actually had papers that show that those oils, through a number of inflammatory processes, can increase insulin resistance. Stay away from seed oils, and those super refined oils rely on extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, animal fats. Those are the oils you should focus on. And no, they're not causing your cholesterol problems. It's more likely the sugar is causing the cholesterol problems. Okay, so for protein, fats, limit your carbs. Then you're going to do some intermittent fasting. As I explained a little bit earlier, it can take about 8 hours after your last bite of food for your insulin levels to come down. About 2 hours after your insulin levels go down, the component hormone, glucagon, can actually come out. A couple hours after that starts to be produced, because remember, your body's not just like a light switch where boom, everything turns on, boom, everything shuts off. It's a timeline. Things take time. Once a cue comes out, the body starts to adjust to that. Glucagon comes out. Human growth hormone is coming out. Ketones are starting to come out. Now you're switching from burning sugar for fuel to burning fat for fuel. Do you know that your fat still has stores of sugar in it, so glucose? So now you're utilizing this fat, you're breaking it back down into a simple form through ketones called glucose, and it's feeding your body again. So the interesting part is when you're in this unfed or fasted state, not only are ketones going up, but in an insulin resistant brain, it will be really susceptible to these ketones delivering energy. So now, even without food and glucose, which your brain needs, but the insulin receptors are shut down, now you're getting fats and ketones into the brain, and the brain's like, oh my gosh, there's energy in here, and now I can thrive. So you start to see this uptake in brain energy. You start to see an uptake in brain clarity. You start to see a reduction of all of these dementia and problems and migraine problems, because your brain is getting energy through another source that it's supposed to be getting energy through. Fasting is hugely important, not just for weight loss. Fasting is important for getting your metabolism to be flexible enough for all of these amazing things to happen in your body. Wait, Karen, what? Wait, what? What do we need to clarify? I'm going to continue. You type in your question. So, fiber, prioritize protein, fats, limit carbs, do some intermittent fasting. Okay. Then you want to move your body. There's three places that utilize insulin the most in your body: your brain, your muscles, and your liver. Remember, your brain uses more per volume, but there's more volume in the muscles, and so they take up a lot of insulin. If you want to become more insulin sensitive and allow the brain to start to get insulin receptors normalized, you got to move your body and allow it to start utilizing some of the glucose that you're taking in. Oh, and have you been doing some fasting? Okay, so, all right. So I hope all it makes sense. Those are my 6 simple steps. Now we can talk about the protocol, because maybe now it'll make sense why I do this. So I'm in a fasted state. We had dinner. Yesterday was supposed to be a fasted day, but look, you guys, this is why I love this stuff. This is not about perfection. Would I love to say I did a 36 and 12 fast every day for 30 days? Yeah, I've done it before. My son leaves in a very short amount of time. We had dinner at his house last night. We had, family bonding time. I've been really tired. If you guys haven't seen, it's because I'm spending so much time with my family oriented. But so we had dinner about 6. That was the only meal I ate. I waited 24 hours before I had that meal. So that puts me at 15 and a half hours of fasting right now. So I'm in a fasted state. What's happening inside of my body now is my HGH is a growth hormone, allowing new cells to build. And human growth hormone isn't about muscles, right? It is, but it's about all of these other processes, about your cells getting the energy they need to grow and replicate properly. That happens with fasting. So when we're fasting and the human growth hormone comes up, this is happening for me now, and my ketones are up. So now my ketones are going out saying, hey, she hasn't put any sugar in her body. We need to find another source of fuel, because your body's continuing to do stuff. Even when you're awake, when you're asleep, when you're doing anything or not, your body's still utilizing energy. So there's just this constant need for energy in your body. When you're not bringing energy in through sugars and foods, it's going to start scavenging all of these places where we have fat stored, where we have toxins and cells that are going bad stored, and it starts using those up. So my body's getting energy without being fed. There's no food in my system. I'm 15 and a half hours into a fast. I'm drinking my tea. The tea doesn't break my fast, and it doesn't do me any harm in that way. This tea actually helps with that ketone production. It helps cue GLP-1 like actions, which we can go into in another live, not this morning, but it cues those actions in my brain and in my gut to allow me to feel full without having eaten. So now my body's like, okay, I'm doing fine. My brain is doing fine. It's not full of brain fog, and I don't have headaches, and I'm not having all of those issues. I get headaches now just because of seasonal allergies, but the tea in the morning gives me all of that. It gives me energy without crashes. It has antioxidant, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory responses. If you listen to me long enough, you're going to understand one of the big mechanisms with insulin resistance causing anything to go awry in the body is the inflammation it causes in the body. So when we have this increased inflammation, we're losing joints, we're having brain function problems, we're having teeth and gums that bleed, and we're having vertigo, and we're having IBS, and we're having a number like skin issues like eczema and psoriasis, and just all around starts with inflammation. So the anti-inflammatory properties in this are really important to me. Plus the fact that it's allowing my body to continue to use fuel that needs to be moved throughout my body anyway. And it gives me energy and mental clarity because there's components in this that can cross that blood-brain barrier and allow nutrients to get into a brain that's starving for energy. That happens with this tea. The tea can be found in my profile link. So I opened up a different pack because I have a couple of packs from before change, but this is what they look like now. So this is my system now. A tea in the morning. I'm actually drinking the lemon ginger flavor. There's a lemon flavor. We're actually coming out with apple spice in a week or two. But then that's the tea. It's different flavors. One of those in the morning. And then I have a pre-meal drink before I eat anything. Now I know there's some shifts going around and you're going to hear some different things. You guys, whether I do OMAD, whether I do 2 meals in a day, whether I do 3 meals in a day, I still try to get in at least 2 of those packets of fiber in a day. Why? Because we're not getting in enough fiber. The fiber packets are more than just fiber. It's 7 different types of soluble and insoluble fiber, has vitamins and minerals, and it has phytosterols in it. All of that stuff just means this. It helps with blood glucose regulation. It helps with healthy heart. It helps with healthy lipid levels. There's scientific studies behind this. Lemon ginger is my favorite tea too, this particular issue. So now, before I eat, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do a little extended fasting today because I broke my 36 yesterday, and which I think I am. I'm probably going to only do an OMAD day today too. But so say in an hour or two, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do OMAD. I'll still probably have this in because even in a fed state, we're only getting in 10 to 15 grams of fiber, and we need about 30 to 40 grams. So why would I do this even if I'm not eating? Because I also suffered with IBS, and that is inching closer and closer to being a non-issue for me. Somebody who suffered with explosive, debilitating, disgustingly embarrassing IBS for years to now have normal movement is amazing. That happens when I get those prebiotics and that variety of fibers into my gut so that my gut, the probiotics in my gut can start to function and take over the scene from the negative gut microbiome, like the yeasts and stuff that were growing. And now I have better gut health. And now the inflammation in my gut's down and all of that happens. So the fiber to me, and I give pushback. I heard somebody saying, oh, we're thinking about doing 2 tea in a day and just 1 fiber. And I'm like, I don't know. At least at this point, I'm not willing to accept dropping 1 of my fiber a day because I feel like it's so important for most of our gut health. But I'm not the scientist. So a tea in the morning, a pre-meal drink before I eat anything. That was a little bit of a tangent. That's how I reversed my prediabetes, or my diabetes into prediabetes into no diabetes, got off 13 different medications and affected all of the stuff above simply by addressing my insulin resistance, by plugging the gaps or starting to fill in the gaps in our nutritional system that causes us all to be insulin resistant today. So petty me, which part are you going to start? Having the fiber regardless? Here's the other thing I want to say before I'm done this morning, and I do want to answer questions. I love you guys' feedback and input, because it means so much to me when you do that. But for the 2 packets OMAD, okay, I had to backtrack. I know a lot of people, and my estimation from the multiple conversations I've had is this. If you're telling me to do intermittent fasting and you want me to do 16 hours of fasting and eat only twice in a day, and we have this paradigm of calorie counting, energy in, energy out model that most of us have been inundated with and indoctrinated with, then most people's minds go, well, if I can turn that 16-hour fast into a 24-hour fast, utilize that extra little bit of autophagy and reduce my calorie intake, I'll do even better. Well, no, that's not true. I'm not a big proponent of OMAD, and some people do. Even Dr. Mindy Pels, who wrote the book Fast Like a Girl, and then even in Dr. Fung's book, I think with the I can't remember. He's written a couple of books on fasting. Anyway, OMAD works for a little while, but then people start to feel like they're resistant to it. What I particularly do, without any science basis, just my Misha brain cog working, I'm like this. If I should be taking in, let's just say 1800 to follow that model, 1800 calories a day. If I ate that every day for 7 days, what would be my total caloric load? But more importantly, what would be my total nutritional load? And then I think, okay, if I'm doing some fasting and I want to support my body nutritionally, I really don't want to take the nutrition away. I just want to allow my body to flex into metabolic flexibility, being able to use fat for fuel. That doesn't necessarily mean that I can't have 1800 calories in a day. It just means that I need to allow my body to not be reliant on insulin all the time. So I don't cut my calories back. I don't focus on any of that. And I watched a Hawaiian guy who I follow for fitness and stuff, just really simple, down to earth wisdom. This is what he said, not a doctor, just a fitness guy. But he said, you know what? We never in human history, can you imagine our ancestors weighing out everything that they ate? Ooh, I got to count my calories today. They never, ever did that. We've never done that. Such a flawed model for so many reasons that I can't talk about this morning. But look, what I do is just focus on nutrients. I don't believe that OMAD does better for you other than that you're going into a little bit more autophagy. And that's why I love the 36 and 12 fast that I'm doing, because I actually get the bigger benefits of the autophagy between 24 and 36 hours. And then when I have a fed day, which should be today, I get to have 3 meals. I get to eat whatever I want within reason. I just follow those same steps. Fiber first, prioritize protein, fill with fats. Then if, like, look at, I told somebody the other day, then if I want to have an Oreo cookie, I'm going to have an Oreo cookie. I don't have to be like, oh my God, I just destroyed my health and I'm going to be diabetic again. No. We're talking about being realistic and real. Do we want to limit those Oreo cookies? And I don't eat them a lot. Actually, they upset my stomach. But I'm just saying, I don't have to be some puritanistic person. I go about life. I enjoy life. I utilize some fasting because that's what our bodies were built for. I allow all the amazing things to happen with that. And I don't restrict calories or nutrients when I do eat. I don't weigh and count anything because that's not building my health. There's so much science coming out against that. All right, so there's that little thing. If you want the system that I'm doing, because it really does help, just go to my profile link right below the red light symbols. There's a link that will take you to my link tree, and the top option is the system I use. When you get there, you're going to find the 6 Simple Steps ebook that I created, free to you. Download it, read it. It's just a very, I don't know, 16 or 18 pages of just what all of those steps are and why, and fasting and why, and all of that stuff. So it's there for you guys who want to understand this and just like me have to go back to refer to something. But if you want the system, order it there. Now, what I want to say with that is I am an authorized distributor for the system. If you go to Amazon, Walmart, eBay to find it, people spend more money with it there than they would with me. When you order from me, because I'm a Unicity, I am an authorized distributor, you get a low price guarantee, you get a 90-day money back guarantee, you get a quality guarantee, and you get access to me for coaching and help. You don't get any of that on Amazon, Walmart, or eBay. You don't get any of the guarantees. You don't get any of the backup. You don't get any of that. So please utilize that link. It will say at the very top, it will be, I'll show you. Let's just go look. Let's just go look. You guys, I spend so much time educating, and part of my education really in helping you guys understand how to overcome all of this. And I do this because because I suffered like so many of you, and I felt like I wasn't getting help. And this is what I did, and the only thing that I found that helped me. So when you get to my profile, you're going to see um, my picture up above. You'll see the red lights. When you click on these links, that's what's going to take you to the page. Now, if you don't remember all of that and you just get to my profile, here's a video telling you how to order. Okay. But when you click on that link, it's going to take you here to order the system. When you click on this, I want you to notice it's not taking you to some weird page. It's taking you to the company page. That's a clue that you're authorized and that the company has had control of this. You're not getting something that's expired or not handled properly. You'll see my name at the very top, and then you go ahead and order. Now, somebody said the other day, this costs $5 a day. Now, until you fill out all your information, this price may show up as $199. If you haven't gone in and said, okay, I want to order and I want to and utilize my code, it may show up as $199. But if you're using my code, you're getting it for the same price as me. Do it on monthly subscription and you get it for $154 instead of $159. It's about $5 a day, and that's it. Look, most of y'all are spending more than that on coffees and stuff that are destroying your health. I understand, because when I got serious and honest with myself and started looking back at what I was eating between chips because I had salty cravings, and maybe a Snickers bar because I had salty and sweet cravings, and maybe a diet soda because I needed energy, I was spending way more than that a day on the stuff that's junk. Um, and I was destroying my health. And I was at the doctor's office twice a month, and I was on 13 medications, and I wasn't getting better. I was getting sicker. Now I'm getting better. Now I'm off of 13 medications. Now I haven't been to a doctor's office in almost 2 years because other than an annual physical, I just don't need to be at a doctor's anymore. And that's a huge difference. So when we talk about cost savings, I want everybody to start thinking about not just that, but when I look at the time I spent driving to a doctor's, the time I spent at the doctor's, the time all of that was going on, that was a cost, right? Those medications, even with a copay of about $10 a month, that was about $130 in medications that they were throwing at me to try and understand what was going on, and they weren't fixing anything. So rather than that, I would rather put something in my body that's adding to my health, that's giving me back what has been stripped out so my body can do what it's supposed to naturally, and I'm not pumped full of medications causing um, all this problem. So the products help like this. The tea in the morning, we're talking about insulin resistance. The tea in the morning helps me feel full and satiated, gives me mental clarity and energy. They've done a short test on this. It actually increased people's well-being score, like how happy and satisfied and well you move through life. People who had never drank it, this tea alone, one tea a day for 30 days, increased their wellness score by 75%. Hero. So that's huge, right? That alone, just that uptake in how your mood and your energy and how you feel, and whether you're depressed and blah, or feeling like you're going to pass out all day because you're so tired, that's a big change. But now it's increasing this thing called glucagon-like peptide, or GLP-1, which is what semaglutide and Ozempic and Mounjaro and those guys are trying to do, with an injection of chemical that is forcing your pancreas to do this at a rate that it's not willing to, or normal to. This is increasing that glucagon-like peptide action in your body by up to 70%. And no normal yerba mate tea can do that. Just this product, because it's so super concentrated, 375 times more of one component called chlorogenic acids than a normal tea. The tea's doing a lot. Antioxidant, anti-cancer properties, full of vitamins and minerals, shutting down my hunger, giving me energy and clarity, allowing me to produce more ketones. So I'm in that fat burning state when I'm fasted. And guess what? When I'm not fasted, if I have breakthrough hunger between meals, I have one of these. It starts shutting down the hunger, but I'm getting nutrients to my body. So it doesn't have a sugar-free taste to me. No, I know what you're talking about, and I don't feel like it does. And we are also switching right now. We still have some artificially sweetened product, but we're switching over to stevia. But yeah, that's the tea in the morning. The pre-meal drink. 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers that are this is what this one is doing. When you drink this one, I put it in about this much water, shake it up, mix it up, drink it down. When I drink that 10 minutes before I eat, these things are happening. That matrix of fibers, and it's important that it's soluble and insoluble fibers and the specific fibers that they are, because not every fiber is good at blood glucose regulation. But there are 3 that, if you look them up, there are 3 that science will say are the best at blood glucose regulation. They're found in that little packet. You don't have to go out and worry, am I eating the right thing? Did I find the right thing? And Metamucil and Benefiber don't have it, so let's not even go there. But it's creating this matrix that starts to thicken up in your gut, starting to feel fuller, quicker. So it always amazes me when people are like, well, I don't want to drink the pre-meal drink because now I feel full before I even eat. Well, that's kind of the point. We've been overeating for so long and not getting in enough fiber. Our bodies don't understand what it feels like to be satiated or feel full. The fiber drink helps with that. But more than that, 10 minutes in your gut before you eat. Now it's starting to thicken up. Now you're feeling fuller. But as you eat and that glucose and those fats are coming in, this fiber, because of the 7 types of fiber, creates this sticky, thick gel matrix in your gut. And that coats those foods that you're eating. Now, here's what it does. So GLP-1s are slowing down your food moving through your system because it's paralyzing, in essence, paralyzing your gut from this thing called peristalsis, where it's contracting to get the food out of the gut into the intestines and from the intestines absorbing the nutrients and then pooping out the waste, right? But all of that takes this contracting. Those GLP-1 medications are also starting to freeze that up so the food is held in your gut longer. Now, the fiber is holding the food in your gut longer because it's taking longer for it to digest, which allows you to feel fuller longer, allows those blood glucose spikes to come down so they're not going as high, spiking your insulin up, but it's not affecting the mechanism of your gut. It's just allowing the food to be in your gut a little bit longer, like it always should have been, while your gut's doing the job it's supposed to. So do I want food sitting in my gut that can't move through because my gut has been paralyzed? Or do I want food in my gut that's not moving through as quickly because there's natural components that are allowing my gut to do its job, allowing my intestines to clean up and build probiotics in my gut? Which one would you prefer? I'm going to take this one. And that's what this does. So it slows down the delivery of that food, allowing you to stay fuller longer, allowing those blood glucose spikes to come down. Actually, studies have shown by 20% on high glycemic foods that can reduce a blood sugar spike by 20%. That's simple. That's what it does. But it also has components that are making it heart healthy by helping regulate cholesterol levels. When will the new formula be able so that I can look that up, Jennifer, and let you know. I know they're in production right now. Like these packets I have still have a little bit of sucralose in them. But here's the thing. I know people tell me they don't like, and I don't like artificial sweeteners and stuff either. I generally try to use stevia, and we've made the switch because so many people have said something. But the efficacy of this, it doesn't do damage to your body. Anyway, I have statements and studies on that as well. There's such a very small amount in there that doesn't, for me, outweigh the benefit of everything else in there. The stevia should be out within the next month or so. I would hope that it's starting to be out in this next month, but I can't guarantee. I know they're utilizing up the old stock and then they're replacing it with the new stock of stevia. So That's what the system is, what it does. You just get it in my profile link. You guys, I'm going to put a link over here in Facebook land, and then I'm going to run off as I do every morning to go do some other things. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about vertigo. Pamela, who has fallen several times and has issues with vertigo, and actually, vertigo can be in its own way life threatening. When you have vertigo, for a long time I wouldn't, like, I used to love to go do cliff diving and do a number of things, and it got to a point where I wouldn't go near an edge because my equilibrium was off, that I wasn't sure if I was going to lose balance and fall over a cliff when I wasn't ready. So it really impaired my life. It caused me to be in an accident that totaled my car, like just weird things. Vertigo is no joke. So all of these issues I talk about have their own thing, and if you're suffering with them, I get it. We're going to talk about vertigo and the links and what's happening in the inner ear with insulin resistance tomorrow. Would you guys do me a favor, though? So next week, I will be talking about what you guys want me to talk about. So if you guys will give some thought tonight to what it is you want me to address during next week's 5 days that I go live, just type them in the chat, send me a message, let me know what it is you want me to go over or you want to hear about. Remember that I stick to insulin resistance. I don't think that insulin resistance causes everything, cures everything. But I think that there's a big enough link with insulin resistance and all of these things. This is my gig. If we can make those links and understand what's really happening and what's exacerbating, making worse, flipping the switch, whatever with these problems, and we can understand how to control it, that's one step in the right direction. And I call insulin resistance the elephant in the room. So if we can take that elephant out, and now we can see, is that squeaky floorboard because of the weight of the elephant, or is it because of a faulty floorboard? Is there a mess there that needs to be cleaned up? So I'm not saying that the protocol is going to cure all your ills. I would never say that. I think that, like for me, it's going to make things enough better that your quality of life has changed. And now, if there's anything left over, you can actually address what is there instead of not knowing why everything is going bad. Okay. So, yeah, petty me. Thank you for that. The sucralose usually makes you swell, but you notice a little bit of sucralose in here does not. And you guys, I don't I don't want to sound flippant. So please understand, I'm just trying to, here I'm going to impart a little knowledge, if you will allow me, and please don't feel attacked by anything I'm about to say, because that's not my intent. But I did a lot of work before I did this on the superconscious, on the subconscious, and on how our brain works. I was actually working to be a coach. I was helping women with sexual trauma, and my friend Steffi was working with veterans with PTSD and trauma. And so we worked on the subconscious brain. All of that to say this: we train our thoughts to be what we think. And so there's all of this stuff out there, and we think that, oh my God, your focus goes, your reality goes where your reality flows where your focus goes. So if you're focused on something and it shows up in your reality, it's because you were looking for it there. Why I'm saying that is, I think a lot of this is people are so afraid because they've heard a bird flew into the window. They've heard science that's incomplete. They've heard science that's not, uh, that's inflammatory. Understand, when we talk about sucralose, in the very small amounts that they are in these particular products that are here today, they're not found to be harmful to the body. Just like sugar in small amounts is not harmful to the body. It's when we overdo. And the studies that people looked at when they said, oh my God, this is so bad for me and I can't do this, or I'm going to get sick, I'm going to die, I'm going to have cancer, I'm going to have whatever. It was 170 times the daily allowance of that substance that they were feeding into those rats to make them be sick. So I want you to step back and say, now look, I'm supposed to be drinking 8 of these, or 8, there would be 4 of these, 8-ounce glasses of water a day. So I'm supposed to be drinking 4 of these a day. If I tried to drink, what's 4 times 170? 4 times 7 is 26. Do I have that right? 170? Yeah. 680 of these a day if I just drank water. And I drank 680 of these a day for 30 days. What do you think would happen to my body? I would start to have some serious issues. That's way too much fluids for the body to handle. That's the studies that they did. And I want people to understand that. Now, the second part of that is when I brought up the subconscious, I have had people say, well, the tea gives me headaches because of the sucralose, but this is fine. I do fine with this, but this makes me feel sick. But if I don't do this and I just do this, I'm not sick. And so it's the sucralose. They both have the same sweetener in them. That was your own thoughts about what your own perceptions and your own reality bending that created that. It really, for the majority, now there are some people who definitely have a real physiological allergy, just like there's definitely people who have, like I have a crazy allergy to cantaloupe, right? Like just because I have an allergy to cantaloupe, does that mean it's bad for everybody? No. So understand that too. And so many people have thought that they couldn't, and they do. And I don't know, is another month or 2 of being sick and continuing to damage your body greatly by all these mechanisms worth it? Or do you want to start to get your insulin under control while we're making this switch and start to get your body better from the biggest onslaught of what's going on in your system? Okay, guys, I'm going to hop off. We'll be back tomorrow talking about vertigo. Please message me and have your suggestions ready for what we want to talk about next week. I'm probably going to talk about the heart one day, but whatever it is that was on that list, let me put it back up. Let me know what it is you guys want me to talk about, because I want to bring you the information you want to hear. So if you see yourself in any of those, PCOS is usually PCOS, and for fertility disorders are usually huge. We talked about thyroid a little bit. Sleep apnea has been coming up. I would love to talk about sleep apnea at some point as well. Haven't talked about edema and neuropathy for a while, or gout, those kind of things. So just let me know what it is you want me to cover, and let's go over it. The biggest thing I want you to take away from this is there's a real root cause to insulin resistance in almost every disease and disorder that we have today. That thing is too much food, too often, spiking our insulin. It's not a lack of medication. It's not a deficiency of medication. It's a deficiency of nutrients in our even organic food. And all we have to do is bridge that gap and start putting that back so our bodies can deal with our food in a more natural form, and we start to get better. And so the way I found to do that, after trying all of the medications, after doing the medical medium and the berberine and the flaxseed oil and all the stuff that was maybe mildly working, but not really getting me the results I needed, I found the system. I switched over. I started doing that. And now I don't have to do. Do I have chia seed pudding every once in a while? Every once in a great while. But I don't have to have that in my fridge anymore for my fiber, for all that stuff. And you know what? This is one of the things I talk about too. I haven't been traveling because I traveled so much last couple of years. I needed a break, but I probably am going to start again here shortly. But when I travel, this is all that has to go in my purse. I have an over-the-shoulder purse, keep it close, keep it tight. These fit in there. When I'm in the airport or traveling, I just have one of these, fill it up with water on the other side, pour either one in, drink it down. I'm good to go. I'm not looking for some place to steep a tea or some canister that's going to stop me um, in the airport to be checked, any of that. So this is simple, portable, sustainable, $5 a day. I actually save money now over what I used to spend. You guys, 90-day money back guarantee. So before you go, ask yourself this question. if there was something out there that could change your life as drastically as it changed mine, it had a 90-day money back guarantee, and all you had to do was give it 90 days try to see if your health could get better, your brain function gets better, your IBS and your colon function starts to get better, your blood sugar starts to drop. All of these things listed above, you could even see marginal increase in, and know that you're building health in your body and strength in your body by doing it. Would you be willing to try it? And why? Better yet, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try it? Why wouldn't you give yourself that chance? So I will see you tomorrow morning. We'll talk about vertigo. Zuby, I will put gout on my list for next week. It'll probably be tied in. I mean, gout's a vascular issue, gout's a number of things, but we'll talk about gout next week. I'll put it on the list. All right, you guys, I'll see you in the morning. We'll talk about vertigo, what's going on in the inner ear with insulin resistance. Love you all. Thanks for trusting me, for spending time with me, for having input for everyone else, because every time you guys all ask questions, somebody else benefits from it. So I appreciate your braveness in speaking out and bringing things up so everyone can learn from your question or your comment. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a great day, guys. Bye, Pamela, Cynthia.